My name is Craig Snodgrass. I work at Cardlytics. We're a local company here in Atlanta. Just real quick, I'm going to plug Cardlytics and then we'll move on from here. So does anybody here have a Bank of America, Regions, or PNC account? If you go to your mobile app, you'll see that you can get these offers, these deals associated with your bank. That's what we do here at Cardlytics. Basically partner with the banks. We use their data, their purchase data in a very, consumer-friendly, private way. And we determine which, working with advertisers, this customer would be good for this type of offer. And, if you're an advertiser and you want to increase your loyalty and frequency of trips or go out and acquire new customers, you can go through us and we can reward that customer's purchase behavior through the bank and through the bank channel. You actually get cash deposited back into your account. By chance, has anyone used one of those offers? Excellent, that's what I like to see. Mr. Torgerson, that's what I like to see. All right, so we are going to go through big data today. As part of big data, we have a minimum threshold of saying big data 100 times. So please keep score at home. If we do not say big data 100 times, we did not meet our goal for today. So the flow for the agenda today is I'm going to go through a couple slides, just explain 4 slides, big data, what does it mean? Just give you guys some background. You're probably all aware of it. It's just more of a setting the framework for the conversation. And then we have 4 folks up here that I'll go through and introduce. And then after we go through introductions, we have a video from Coke, because in true Coke fashion, they came with some good marketing material. And then I'm going to have 2 canned questions, and then I'm going to open it up to the folks in the room to ask their questions of the panel. Sound good? All right, so let me hit the slides real quick. If we can go to the next slide. So big data, this presentation is called the Sea Changes in Analytics. If we go to the next slide, when you look at big data, the best way to describe it is to just jump to the last box, which is where we are now. Effectively, we are capturing and accumulating data from your normal places in, the behaviors that we're used to when you go enter in information along the web, to your toaster is now accumulating data. Your air conditioning systems are accumulating data. All these different places are accumulating and capturing the data, and that's really what the big data last component is. These different places are generating and we're capturing that data. If we go to the next slide, I just want to establish the 3 V's of big data. Of course, the first one is obvious. The first V of big data is volume. Not going to go into that one, but the next one is velocity. Not only the rate at which we are accumulating and acquiring the data is growing exponentially, the rate at which we want to be able to make decisions on this data that we're accumulating faster, that need to make a decision is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's really one way you start to differentiate yourself with big data. It isn't the fact that you can handle it, it's how fast you can handle it and how fast you can convert it into insights. And then the last piece is variety. The best example of variety is if you think about all the video that's being uploaded onto YouTube and the other sites every single day. Not only is it massive, but that data at the end of the day is digital. People are able to convert that and look for trends inside the data that's being uploaded. YouTube has algorithms that looks at, as the data is being loaded, will this video be popular or not? And if they think it's going to be popular, then they can start ranking it higher in its relevance score. And they do that strictly off of algorithms and patterns they see in the data as you're loading it. Next slide talks about, just need to throw it out there, right? The amount of data that's going to be captured is very, very hard to wrap your arms around. Anybody know how many zeros are in a zettabyte? Come on. This is common everyday stuff. 21 zeros, 10 to the 21, right? That is 35 billion terabytes. I think we're all just to the point now where we're starting to talk about terabytes. And obviously, in the field of big data, they've already moved on to the zettabyte. And something I learned at the table today with the folks here on the panel is Google is actually a measure of size as well. 10 to the 100 is a Google. So a Google is 100 zeros, and I'm sure they cannot wait for the day that they're at 100 zeros so they can talk about that Google has a Google's worth of data. Last slide before we go over introductions. This slide might be a bit hard to see. This slide is meant to be a bit of an eyesore. It isn't just that the volume of data is growing. With the volume of data goes, the technology associated with it is growing rapidly as well. Everyone in this room is either part of that company or has people visiting them that are part of these companies that are explaining how they differentiate themselves either in the big data provider space, how they can handle the big data, or how they can decision data on top of it. Again, pure eyesore. Next year when we have this conversation and the year after it, it'll just continue to get more and more crowded in that space. That's it. Any questions before we move off to the panelists? All right, so let me go through, introduce the four folks that are up here. So we have Matt Beck. We have Mark Pearson, Rajib Roy, and Doug Rollins. So if you guys want to go through and give an introduction and explain what you do.
Sure. Hi, my name is Matt Beck, and I lead the solution consulting practice at FICO, focused on our marketing solutions. It's my opportunity to be able to work with companies in multiple industries. So I do spend time in financial services, but I also get to work in retail with merchants, and I get to work in pharmaceuticals as well, a little bit of insurance. And FICO is a well-known company, I think, in this room. We've got about a 50-year track record of providing predictive analytics solutions in financial services and growing that business into the other industries that I work in as well. And I'm happy to be here today and look forward to answering your questions.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm Mark Pearson with SunTrust Bank, which is a commercial bank here in Atlanta. And I drive innovation for SunTrust. So what does that mean? Drive innovation programs for teammates, trying to get them engaged, innovation partnerships with our large vendors, and then building and curating sort of an entrepreneurial technologist network across the bank to apply to innovation and actually investment projects across the institution.
I'm Rajib Roy. I run the identity and fraud business in Equifax. My business is in 14 countries. Before this, I ran two software and analytics companies in the supply chain area. Today, perhaps I might be one of the people who's representing more from the business side rather than the technology side. One of the reasons I'm here is really to understand from you what is big data. And then I found out I have been put up here on the panel, so I'll try my best.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Doug Rollins. I am at Coca-Cola, and I just realized I'm supposed to be in the Kentucky Fried Chicken. This may be the wrong panel. I am a marketer, so on the business side, but particularly around consumer marketing, and I've been at Coke for about 18 years. My practice that I sort of manage from a global standpoint in our global marketing and commercial leadership team is around what we call precision marketing. So it's related to the space of big data. I focus on how do we leverage data that's available to drive relevance in marketing communication. So a little bit of a fish out of water. I'm not sure if we have other marketers in the audience, but certainly a different perspective that I can bring when we think about how the Coca-Cola company is using data that is becoming increasingly plentiful to drive relevance in our communication. Are we going to talk trends or?
Yeah, well, let's run the video first,
All right.
And then we're going to go through and talk trends. So if you can run the video from Coke.
Right. PCI.
Numbers, targeting data, and mass marketing got us to where we are today. But now, things have changed. Consumers control the conversation. They're eager to share a lot with their friends and, yes, their favorite brands. But only if our conversations are relevant and add value, and we respect their time and privacy. They've invited us to follow their data trails, to understand them as individuals, to deliver liquid and linked content they'll like and offers they'll use, when, where, and how they want them. This kind of precision marketing was unthinkable a year ago. It's happening today. It's about to change everything. Here's a 23-year-old Diet Coke drinker, a loyalty program member. Because she likes us on Facebook, she's invited us to learn more about her. Let's get to know her. On a warm, sunny afternoon, a vending machine detects her smartphone and talks to our online database. Because of her location and speed, we know she's bike riding in a park. From shopper data, we know she usually buys a competitive sports drink. It's hot. She's exercising. Here's a chance to switch her to Powerade Zero by texting her an offer to scan at the vending machine. Later that evening, she's inviting her friends to a party next weekend. A perfect opportunity to expand our share of wallet. We already know she's a Diet Coke fan, so we send her a variety offer for her friends. And some music that's based on their favorite artists. A few days later, her mobile tells us she's at her favorite store. She could be shopping for her party. So let's remind her of the variety offer and include a mobile coupon to make purchase easier at checkout. After the party, we'll send her a survey and offer loyalty points for her opinions, which will help us optimize our offers in the future. That's a few days in the life of a Diet Coke drinker, filled with opportunities for brand value and brand love. Now, multiplied by 1 billion, and the future is here. Today, we're following the flow of clicks, swipes, likes, and feedback, and using data in ways we used to dream about. With precision marketing, we have the tools to travel with consumers on their journeys through life and grow like we've never grown before. So let's all dive in and go with the flow of beautiful data.
It's amazing when you think about the 3 V's, volume, velocity, and variety. I mean, the video had it all, particularly on the velocity piece. You saw how important it was to be able to make a decision at a certain time, riding a bike, getting near a vending machine, making a purchase at the point of sale, to be able to remind somebody as they enter in the store. That encapsulates, the 3 V's. I'm glad I put that together for you. All right, so couple canned questions to get things started, then we're going to turn it over. So I'd like to go for the panel. Basically, if you could discuss what does big data mean to you and what trends do you currently see as it relates to big data? I think I'm up to 15 right now.
All right. I guess I'll start. I'll start with the trends, actually. The kind of 2 key trends that I see in working with clients in a number of different industries. I'd say after the economic downturn, a lot of companies have really focused on customer retention as their primary strategy and making sure that they're holding on to their best customers. And I see that as playing out over time through these big data solutions. And really there's a lot of investment, there's a lot of focus that's being put into leveraging big data for the purpose of increasing customer engagement and really understanding the customer and treating people as individuals. I think, as you saw in the video, people want to be recognized for how they interact with the brand. They want to be recognized for the contributions they make in terms of purchase. And I think the reality is that customer expectations vastly exceed our ability to meet those expectations. And there's a huge opportunity to do more and do better. And so while that video might be, appear to be somewhat futuristic, it's not very futuristic. We need to get there. We need to get there much faster than we have in the past. And then the second key trend that I see is a little bit more on the technical side. But having worked in IT for a long time, I've seen sort of a lot of failures of big data type projects in the past. You wouldn't have called it big data back in the day, but maybe the customer data warehousing days. And a lot of those failures were, in my opinion, led by this mentality that we have to have a big bang. We have to get this project done, and we're going to start a project at a defined date, and it's going to get over, in 18 months, and everything's going to be perfect at the end of 18 months. And I think some of the technology that's being employed today with big data solutions allows us to avoid some of those pitfalls by taking a more incremental approach and realizing that you're never going to be perfect and that you need to evolve over time. Start with something that's meaningful, that adds business value, and create a roadmap for a couple years out, because you probably can't even see a couple years out, and work towards that roadmap and constantly evolve it. So I see that working with clients in a number of industries, that they move away from this sort of big bang, big data project mentality to big data is a reality. It's part of the way we do business, and we're going to constantly evolve and improve. And then lastly, how do we define big data? I'll try to take a somewhat unconventional definition. I see big data solutions as being solutions where they're based and predicated upon customer transactional behavior. And that can mean a lot of different things in a lot of different industries. In Coca-Cola's terms, customer transactional behavior might be entering a PIN code into your SMS and sending it back to Coke. In financial services, it's every credit card transaction or DDA transaction that happens with the customer, every interaction with an ATM. So to me, those are big data solutions. When it involves a known customer, identifiable customer, and a point in time and a behavior, that becomes big data, because we can collect so much of that data, and really driving business value from that is what I see as big data solutions.
Okay. So first, what does it mean to me? Well, I have a pretty strong compute background, so I see it for the computer componentry and what the implications are. I see the compute power of the consumer and the client growing at exponential rates faster than core computing and corporations to sort of serve them. So while big data was sort of the province of the technology groups and the business models of some pretty innovative companies 10 years ago, and they built sort of their own internal technology to confront that, now this technology is out, and it's pretty common. For us at SunTrust, that means that we can use this to sort of address some of our legacy issues. We're more on the perfect side, so we have to make sure that a lot of the data that we present back to the client is exactly right, because you pay for that precision. But the way we do it is based on technology and operations rooted from about 30 years ago. So the componentry provides a capability to maybe skip over some steps and actually really improve that. It also allows us to maybe integrate. Of the V's I'm most interested in our context is variety. We spend a lot of time conforming the data so that we can process it. With these techniques, you can actually leave the data in place or actually try some things out before you feel like you have to conform it, cutting back on time. The only other thing about big data is the implication on the business process. So if we actually are generating not just internal insights, but trying to create insights back to our clients, that's a different type of value model, and it requires a different type of thinking in our business management structure, which is something that I think all sort of legacy corporations or any corporation that was formed before 5 years ago would have to confront. So those are the kind of things that come up when I think of big data.
These days I cannot open up my email box in the morning without coming across 17,000 people who in my email box are offering to help me with my big data problem. So going through them, I have convinced myself big data is like teenage sex. Everybody wants to do it. Everybody thinks everybody else is doing it. Nobody has any clue what they're talking about. In reality, I think we are to me, what big data is, I think it's a great opportunity upon us. I don't think we understand or can even fathom how great that great is. Last couple of times when this much information became so quickly available to so many people at such a fast pace, did bring in some of the largest changes and pace of changes very different business models in this world. If you go back to the printing press, that was probably the first example of suddenly a lot of information being available to a lot of people. Internet did the same thing. And I think we are going through yet another those printing press, internet kind of moment. Like people did during printing press, when printing press was invented or when internet came, our first step is try to solve our current problem in a slightly better way. And I think that's what we are trying to do with all those data that are being collected from the toasters and the refrigerators. We're trying to figure out, how do I get to the same customer in a very different way? How can I understand the same customer? How do I do the precision marketing, etc.? And we will go through this phase. The real excitement to me with big data is very new business models that will emerge, very different businesses that will emerge from this. When internet was invented, none of us knew that my wife, who is a painter, can actually sell her paintings from a website without ever having to leave her home, right? Those business models are going to emerge over the next 5 to 10 years, and I think that's where the excitement is. I'll give you a quick example. This is not an original example. Either somebody told me or I read it somewhere. If you go back to the cave dwellers, when they saw a horse out there in the hills, the cave dweller came back, he drew a horse, probably took him or her 2 days, 3 days to scribble it on the wall. My wife, who is a painter, as I mentioned, once she has conceptualized or seen a horse out in the farm, it takes her no more than 2.5 hours to put it on oil and paint. So that time has been cut down to 2.5 hours. Do you know how long it takes me? I just bring out my camera, go out and take a photo of that horse. I did the same thing that the cave dweller did, as my wife did, rendition of an object out there. It takes me, 1/6 of a second to take that snapshot. And I think that's the phase we are in. We're trying to draw the horse, trying to figure out how can you do it faster, faster, and faster. But take that example couple of steps forward. When I start taking pictures of that horse at 24 frames per second, I'm collecting that much data that quickly, what happens? You suddenly capture motion. You're no more in a rendition of a static object. You suddenly have movies, right? It came because I extended that, how fast I could take that picture. So a whole different business model came out from that exponential change that happened, and it suddenly went over a flipping point. And I think that's what we are going to see in this world. That will create great opportunities for many of you to start your own businesses, business models, bring your own ideas, values to the world in very different way. That, to me, is the excitement of big data.
I can't follow that. I just want to cue the video again, if we can.
That's right. Yeah, one more time.
For me, the way, and again, I'm in marketing, and we do have obviously a large organization, and we have folks that are focused on big data. Our IT teams are starting to staff up with the right kind of technology expertise, and I'm sure from a BI standpoint, we have folks that are starting to really get into this. But from a marketing standpoint, I'm trying to manage the conversation really around not big data, but smart data. And touching on something that you said, Rajib, was making sure we actually know the problems we're trying to solve. I think everybody looks at big data and it's a little bit overwhelming, but partially because no one is saying, I need 3 questions answered, and if I had the right data, I could go and answer those. So I'm thinking about it from a smart data standpoint as a way to sort of pull it in and force folks to be a little bit more clear about the objective setting phase, which I'll be the first to admit at Coke, we're often about the sizzle in the video, and then we're on to the next thing. So understanding the business problem we're trying to solve, I think, is critical. From a trend standpoint, or maybe more likely the things that sort of keep me up, at least from a consumer packaged goods standpoint at night, which could lead to trends and opportunities for new businesses. Number one is around the content space. So we traditionally, as a consumer packaged good company, we create a campaign, which is a set of marketing materials, right? We have a couple of TV spots, some out-of-home boards, we have some display units, we have search criteria, keywords and such. But the ability that data unlocks over time is to connect in real time with what I like to say is the right message, right time, right place, and right consumer. So if we truly know enough about everyone, think the video and the context for the temperature where they are, the speed at which they're traveling, and what we draw from that in terms of insights. The ability to find the right piece of content, which traditionally for us has meant a TV spot or a piece of video, implications for our content management lifecycle and how we're going to create and feed that, and opportunities, I think, for companies that curate. Clearly, we're not going to create it all, so how do we have companies out there that are going to help us find, curate, develop, and secure the rights for, which is a big challenge for companies like ours. So in some ways, we're all going to become sort of media companies in that we're going to have an always-on conversation going on that will be driven by hyper-relevance. So one is content and the content lifecycle, a big opportunity for us. Two is resources. So the easy way to sum this up is, I've often sort of tongue-in-cheek said we're going to need more campaign managers and less brand managers, right? But if we're going to have all these new pieces of content and new ways to engage in dialogue across all of these digital connection points, right? So vending machines. We have, the Coca-Cola company owns some out-of-home boards, some big billboards that you guys may see as you're driving through town, where we're serving content to those based on the time of day. As more and more of these connection points become digital, and we have the ability and need to flight content to those in a meaningful way so that consumers find relevance and consistency, we're going to need a whole new set of resources. And so it's going to force a change in how we think as a marketing organization about how to connect with consumers. And then finally, I think there's technology, but I'm less focused on the Hadoop clusters and databases and the kinds of things that the IT team might be focused on, but more about marketing automation, right? So if we're going to have thousands and thousands of pieces of content, and we're going to have all of these new resources that are skilled and trained at flighting content to manage conversation ongoing across all these channels, we're going to need marketing technology and automation tools that will make that easier for us. There are a lot of those on the market now. We haven't yet to jump into that fray, and I think that will be a big opportunity for us.
I'm going to build on that with one trend. I'm going to build on that with one trend that I see, which is when you talk about hyper-relevance, consumers know that this data is being collected. There is an expectation that it's being used to actually benefit them positively. So this idea of hyper-relevance, when it works, it's like, yep, this is what I expect to happen. I expect to have the right message at the right time. But when it's wrong, it feels more wrong than what it has in the past, because there is this expectation with this data, you guys are doing something with it, and you're doing something with it to benefit me. So let me just hit a couple points before we jump into the next one, then we'll turn it over, right? Which is, when I think of big data, it is the end of the consumer panel in my mind. Consumer panels are stated data. Big data is demonstrated data. And there's a big difference between the two. And for what we do from a purchase behavior standpoint, in a panel you hear somebody, oh, I always shop here. But in reality, when you start looking at the demonstrated data, that answer is not accurate. So the shift into big data and this variety of data sources is allowing us to answer more demonstrated behaviors, answering questions with demonstrated behaviors rather than stated behaviors. And one last point I want to bring up on the trends piece is the tools are not just making it easier to deal with this zettabytes worth of information. It's making it easier for us. You don't have to be a 25-year-old PhD whiz kid to understand how to manipulate some of these large pieces of data. The technology is allowing that to basically get disseminated to all parts of the organization so that they can start driving conclusions on their own. And once they get used to it, it starts to take over their methodology and their mind. And I'm going to use an example here, right, which is everybody get 2 cocktail tickets. I can't get past the fact that there's numbers on here, and they should be relating this number back to me, and they should be figuring out what it is I'm going to go drink afterwards. And then that should go feed some database somewhere to help better my next attendance at an event like this, so that they already have my drink waiting for me when I come in. It is probably a Coke, yeah, or a Diet Coke in this case for me. All right, so second question, we're going to pull it over, which is I want to talk about talent and in the realm of big data, how is it that you're thinking about talent, or how has it impacted your talent strategy, both from acquiring talent as well as keeping talent and building talent internally? And we'll just go in the same order again, if that's all right with you guys.
Yeah, at FICO, we've had a history of building and maintaining customer and prospect databases, and I think before the word big data was around, we were doing things a lot like that, right? And so what we see is really our current employees are interested in building skills in the new technologies, and one of the phrases that we've used is we bring in this technology, and it's like putting a Ferrari in the garage. You give smart people access to these new technologies, they're going to use them, just like if you left the keys to your Ferrari on the countertop and you left your kids at home, they're going to use it. So we've had good experience just getting the right technology in place and letting people explore and learn on their own and get involved with it. I personally sponsored a conversion activity from an older technology solution that we were using to a more of a big data platform, and the team came to me and said, well, you need to give us a defined budget for how many hours we can spend to do this. I said, I'm not giving you any budget. So if you want to make your weekends and nights easier, and you want to don't want to have to get up and watch these jobs run, just get this done. You figure out how to do it with your current staff. And surprisingly, they did. So my view is that the people we already have working on these solutions are plenty talented enough to figure it out. That's not to say we haven't hired some experts from the outside that have proven experience with these technologies and getting the platforms set up and operating correctly, but I have a lot of confidence in the people that we've worked with for a number of years and that they can adapt and learn new technology.
I'm talking about talent. So I think we have some nascent efforts driving big data at SunTrust. On the delivery side, we're not really so concerned, but Doug brought up something interesting earlier about clarity. In other words, when I want to integrate big data and use that in my project, I've got to be a little bit clearer and more crisp on how I might use it and what the outcomes are. And if I've never really done that, having that conversation is difficult. So what we need are some analysts that can broker that conversation, and they're special analysts. So they're analysts that can work with our technology folks, and they're spread, all over the U.S. and all over the world, so you have that issue. But they also have to be able to talk to the business and help put things in context for the business. And a lot of times, the way these are typically structured, you have folks in the business that might know a lot about it, and then you have people translating that into computer code over in the IT department. And this is sort of a special role because I'm not sure our business really conceives of how these things run. The final thing is it stresses our infrastructure environment. If you're used to running traditional infrastructure that you capitalize over 5 years or whatever, and you treat that as a scarce resource, the whole notion of this technology where you're really throwing hardware at it is very much a different type of notion. So you need a different financial models in some cases, depending on how much data and how that infrastructure is built. That's something that's a pressure point in our organization with respect to big data.
On my side, talent actually is an issue. I run a fraud business. Most of the traditional way of looking at data and analytics in credit bureaus like Equifax really doesn't hold good when you get into fraud. And fraud to me is a very specific case of big data. A couple of examples. You probably know your credit score. If you know how your credit score is computed, it's basically regression-based correlation analysis. That's what we do. It runs on a sample. Those are all things that go against what big data tells you to do. Big data is all about studying the whole population, not a sample, to develop a model. Traditional models are linear. Real-life relationships are nonlinear. Big data technologies actually allow you to look at nonlinear correlations. These are not talent that we have, and regardless of what other credit bureaus say. I believe we have built a business over 20 years running linear regression-based analysis. So it is, we are being thrown into, I'm learning new words, machine learning and all this stuff. I don't understand them, but I understand enough that short term I will have a tremendous talent gap. So if any one of you want to make money, if you remember back when the internet came, suddenly computer science became the sexiest subject to study. During Industrial Revolution, it was mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, etc. I do believe statistics is going to be the in colleges for some time. So if you want to make money, you might want to start a school teaching statistics to a lot of people. There is going to be money there. Structurally, though, this talent problem will solve itself in different ways. If you remember when we were running in 90s, when we were running short of technology people, whole new business model came up, right? This Y2K fueled IT outsourcing. Suddenly we realized we don't have to get talent from here. There are other people in other parts of the world who can solve some of our capacity issues. I think similar things will come. One thing I'm very hopeful of, and I hope some of you will actually build such tools, is the world will build tools such that this whole esoteric aspect of statistics is dumbed down such that even old guys like me can actually do some big data analysis. So there will be structural solutions that will come up, but short term, we will have quite some talent gap.
And I touched a little bit on resources from a talent standpoint. I think there are implications for consumer communication and how marketing teams will evolve to take advantage of what data enables. Just by a show of hands, how many people here have heard of the term, maybe overused, but data scientist? Okay, so an embarrassing story. Here I am. I am supposed to own this capability of precision marketing on the marketing side globally, and on the way to a workshop in Mexico City last September, maybe, in the airport came across a Harvard Business Review article where it was talking about the data scientist, and sort of, it was almost like all of a sudden, the analogy I guess I would have for kids is it was sort of the 4-year-old soccer game where everybody followed the ball and there was a dust cloud. That was sort of my first introduction as I've struggled through sort of how do we apply some of this capability to the marketing space, to what the idea of a data scientist might be, or even a data strategist. So from a marketing standpoint, we as an organization just hired our first data strategist about 3 months ago, and it was in one market in the US where we have stronger budgets and a little bit a bigger chance to have a more in-depth specialty and capability. So it is going to be a big gap for us to actually have people that can help understand how to get from big to smart. So what are your objectives, and how am I going to help you look in this sea of data and attempt to draw insights and conclusion, ultimately driving wisdom and allow us to make business decisions better? The other thing I would say from a talent standpoint, and this is probably not people as much as it is culture or empowerment, but there's going to have to be an evolution around how other organizations that support us think and act. I was struck by some of the comments during the lunch break around the regulation, and obviously in financial services, highly regulated. My experience with the regulation tends to be, fighting with our chief privacy officer about how we can phrase opt-in language and what privacy policies might look like. And at a time when data is allowing us to be so much more relevant, and that's important that we have relevance and we have trust, right? That where we only are really communicating where consumers have opted in to hear from us. But at a time where that opportunity is presenting itself, I'm seeing even more regulation occur in terms of how we have to phrase things, in terms of how the opt-in language has to work, in terms of how we treat consumers, where we store the data. So it's concerning to me, I think, and there's an opportunity to think more organization-wide from a talent standpoint about how we are going to, as an organization, evolve into the future where data unlocks so many new opportunities.
I'll end with the data scientist. I think is just like big data. It's come up recently, and everybody likes to hear that word. One thing to remember for talent is, for these data scientists and these folks dealing and wrangling with big data, they will, we'll run a campaign, we'll generate 20 terabytes worth of information. It gets moved and manipulated and transformed, and it all ends up in one PowerPoint slide with 2 bar graphs and 3 bullet points. And, they got to celebrate the fact that that's a big win, but for them, all of this work went into, manipulating and taking all this data. They would rather that slide be 500 pages long rather than just the one, but in reality, this like Doug was saying, going from big to smart, it really is synthesizing that into the clear thing that you want to go take away, and that's the talent that we need to be working on is how do you synthesize that into that one crisp takeaway. So that's it. We have 20 minutes left to go through any questions. So by all means, any questions? We couldn't have been that good. In the sweater vest. The sweater vest is representing today. I appreciate that.
Well, hold on.
Hold on.
Okay, there we go. Empowerment.
All right, thank you. If we start with the cave painter, and then we go to your wife painting the picture with all the high technology of canvas and ready-made paints, not in a cave, and then we go to you taking a picture, perhaps an electronic picture, and then we go to you taking a movie. The thread I hear is you're watching the person ride the bike through the park, you're seeing how fast she's going, she's getting close to the vending machine, and so you're going to set it up by sending a message to her that says, pull over, we'll give you a free can. What's the next generation? Could it possibly be where you can also take factors that she's exhibiting that we don't know about yet and predict her intent and make changes that are not overt but covert to induce her to do that by herself?
Sure. I'll make 2 points. First is, if I could tell you what are those business models, I'd be busy building multiple companies now. It's like when DARPANET was made available to everybody as internet. If I knew that there'll be something called e-commerce that will come, I would be sitting there and writing e-commerce code, right? But there is something you said there that is absolutely true, regardless of how these business models emerge. To me, big data is all about prediction. If you can, the fundamental problem we'll always try to solve is, can we predict? If we could predict future, there is money in it, right? He or she who can predict future better than anybody else will make more money. To me, all big data, and this is my way of looking at it, all big data solution will be geared towards this whole art of predicting. So that word that you use is core. What business models will emerge to do better than others? I think that's the exciting part. We will find that out not by drawing a straight line from what we are doing today, but because there'll be some fundamental shifts that many of you will actually bring in.
Yeah, one phrase to look, you go out and Google prescriptive analytics. So it takes predictive analytics as you kind of know that someone's getting close to being thirsty or getting, there's something coming up, there's an intent to go do something, and then prescriptive analytics is about then trying to figure out of the 500 things that could be done, which one is the right one to be done for that person at that time. That's one of those trending, if you start looking at the trending different fields going on inside of big data, prescriptive analytics is something new that I'm hearing more about now than it was 2 years ago. And it makes sense. I think it's just part of that next evolution of where you're going next.
For us, it's about evolution to more of a direct marketing model, right? So, I mean, everybody talks about Amazon now as how do we evolve our business to be more like Amazon? As a brand building organization, direct marketing is something that's sort of a no-no. We don't talk about that word, but in actuality, where we're headed is very much to that sort of mentality where what is the predicted next best piece of communication that elicits a desired response, right? I mean, that's what direct marketing is. So it's not just about catalogs, but literally how do I, based on my objective, so you got to know what am I wanting the consumer to do, but what is the next best thing? And they're certainly in session, right? I mean, there are software companies that, based on your browsing behavior, will serve you a predictive piece of content that you'll interact with. And I think that where we're going to see this evolution, he's absolutely right, is more real time that happening across channels, leveraging all the data.
So the person with the microphone is going to win naturally.
Okay. Following on the aspects of predicting vis-a-vis behavior. How do you gentlemen view big data increasing the security of your organizations and related to the cyber activity that's going on today?
He said gentlemen, so I'm out. You guys.
No, I really wanted to ask you about the sex thing, but we'll do that offline.
Is the fraud guy? Do you want to take?
Sure, okay. To me, this is the beauty of big data. This is what I can do today or start doing today what I couldn't before. Look at my business. I'm in the business of stopping security issues, fraud issues, not only with banks, but telcos, government, state, and federal. All those folks who today tout fraud solutions that all of you buy if you're responsible for security and fraud, they try to stop known frauds. If you knew the method of the fraudster, you can come up with a solution to stop that, right? And the beauty of this whole fraud and security area is the methods keep changing. It's always who's one up on the other, right? You found out a solution, they find another way of compromising your security. They find another way of compromising your account. Now, if you now ask yourself, okay, the known problems I've solved, the ones that I know, how do I know what they're thinking next? And I think this is where cool business models will come up. Do you know what companies do? Can you think of a way of figuring out what is the unknown way that the fraudster is trying to get in? Have you heard of behavioral anomalies? So what you do is you don't know what they're doing. So what you try to do is there something different in what they're doing? Well, in the traditional data analytics, you always look at a sample. Trying to look for that one anomalous transaction in a small sample, you're going to miss it every single time possibly, right? But with big data analytics, with big data tools, with big data technologies, with big data domain expertise, suddenly we are able to analyze the entire transaction volume and find out that one needle in the haystack, that two needles in the haystack that seem to be having very anomalous behavior from rest of the transaction. That's what gets our attention, saying, what is happening there? That's when we realize, oh, this is the way they're coming at us. So then we build solutions and then figure out how to stop that. To me, that's why big data is so interesting. That's why I said fraud is a unique case for big data, because it as in big data analytics now allows us to find the newer methods of fraud much faster than we could do before.
I would just say, so at SunTrust, we have a demonstrated ROI on the fraud. We used to do a lot of fraud checking and check kiting, remember that, after the post. And now we pre-process 3, 4, 5 times before the post to look for that behavior. But follow the path a little bit. The retailers and other folks learn how to reach people, and they're carrying around the cell phone. And we're capturing behaviors. So for payments and for behaviors with the bank to run through something that you have and something that you're known to use, and for me to look at the entire data set on your entire history of how you're likely to use it, that makes that fraud calculation a lot easier. It's a very proletariat example, but I don't have to pay for the network. I don't have to pay for this device because people's screen time is moving away from maybe fixed space televisions. They're spending a lot of time on these mobile devices. So as those transactions, this starts getting weaved into the experience, we'll be able to take advantage of that. And the amount of data we're talking about for things that happen at the bank is actually pretty small. Here's the other reason. Here's an economic reason, which is why, this is how we think at the bank. If I deploy hardware today to solve a typical problem, I'm guaranteed that hardware will be 20% of the cost today 5 years from now. The whole throw hardware at it. So why wouldn't I do that? even if it's reasonable today, it's more than reasonable into the future. And so those are the kind of things to think about. We don't necessarily think about the economics of spending capital like this. That's why investing in these analysts, investing in these business processes is so important, because the cost of delivering them is going to drop. Yes, there's more and more data, but not every enterprise has to capture or deal with all of that data.
Another question right here.
Yeah, so having been in and around data solution companies my career, one of the things I want to ask about is the consumer. So when you think about the consumer mindset, a lot of the data is collected passively today or indirectly intentional. So if I like something on Facebook, I might be just trying to tell Rajib, hey, I like something that you like, but I'm not necessarily intentionally saying, hey, Coke, I want you to market to me because of that like. So as you have this passively type data collected, I'd like to hear from the panel around how they think about how we can get ahead of any potential concerns around that. So if I want to say I'm an authenticated consumer, I'm a good risk. How can I tell you that? If I want to tell you exactly everything about what I'm interested in, of what, when, and where to market to me, I'd like to hear your thoughts around how enabling the consumer to have more empowerment there.
I can start. One of the things I would encourage you to do is to read the permissions box when you log in using your Facebook credentials.
All 6 pages of them.
It's no one reads those, but if you did, you would understand that the way the data is being used may be far more reaching than you suspect. One of the things that we're looking at, everybody talks about social in particular, since you mentioned that, as a great opportunity to look at some of the signals out there, right, to learn more about people. And companies that we're looking at, and there are a growing number of these, as we build a consumer database, being able to append affinity data based not on your likes, because in some cases I'm not sure a like is all that valuable, right, depending on the mindset when you like something, but the kinds of activities you do. So if you retweet something, if you post a link, there are algorithms and companies that are crawling all of that publicly available data and attempting to know more about you so that we can be more relevant in our communications. The key is that it always comes back to relevance. And that's the big balancing act. There are going to be obviously bad apples in the barrel that are going to push the envelopes. But for Coke, and I think for a lot of the companies that are represented here, it's about trust first and foremost. And we don't violate that trust. So we're going to proceed very carefully. And a critical point in the hopefully easier to read privacy policy and the things that consumers will opt into from Coca-Cola is sort of a clear understanding of why we're needing that information, right? So one of the biggest things that I often educate our marketers around the world on is just because you can, via Facebook Connect, collect all that information doesn't mean you should, right? So it's not about getting as much data as you can. It's about getting the right data, and you shouldn't get data unless you have a plan to leverage. In realistic terms, even 10 years ago, we had markets that went out and started email programs or started building a consumer database, collected opt-ins, so would you like to hear from Fanta again? And then we never talked to the consumer again, right? So we've got to hold our end of the bargain, and there's a principle in relationship marketing around equitable value exchange, but it says that, hey, the consumer will give me a little bit, and in exchange, they need to see that they're getting commensurate value, and then I'm not abusing the privilege. So I think it's about trust for us. I don't know that will always come out clearly in all of our programs, but I think that's what we're driving, is that first and foremost, we want consumers to trust that the data that we hold is something that we will protect closely. And that will be the balancing act, right? So showing the value that we deliver in doing that.
I think it's a very valid concern. I don't think most of us even know how much of our data is being collected and by whom. And as big data changes, like the printing press and the internet, as it comes, I think there are a couple of very nutty problems that I certainly I'm not an expert to give you any answer, but I think those two, there are a couple of problems that have to be tackled to the ground. One is concerns around privacy, the other is regulatory aspect. Concerns around privacy, it tends to be a very demographic dependent issue, age group, country. I mean, you go to London, every piece of your motion has been captured on some camera out there. They don't mind. Here, we revolt if they put a red light camera there, right? So there is this whole demography-oriented privacy issues. These are, I think, going to be interesting challenges to solve. The second part of it is regulatory. Litro, how many of you know a Litro camera? How many of you have heard of Litro? It's a great example of practical use of big data. That camera does not focus on any object. It just takes 10 million planes of picture. And it lets you later decide what do you want to focus on. You might say, okay, I took this picture, I want to focus on Marianne, this game. 5 months later, FBI found out there's some guy over there who turned out to be a terrorist. They can take the same picture and focus on that person to learn about that person. It takes 11 million planes of picture. Now look at that. What did we do? We collected the data for one purpose. Much later, we used it for a completely different purpose. And that is one of the precepts of big data. So when you are a regulator, okay, you are saying, okay, you have to check box against those 6 pages. But you know what? Later, that data is going to be used for completely different purpose that you don't even know. And so how do you deal with those issues? These are going to be pretty interesting challenges to go through as a society.
Because consumers are expecting the relevance, right? I mean, at some point, you're going to be annoyed if your passbook doesn't recognize that you're at the airport and ready to check into your flight and it doesn't show up. And that's relevance, right? You don't go, wait a minute, something's tracking me. It's not paranoia. I mean, 5 years ago, if we said how many people want to have a GPS-enabled phone so that it's self-aware, everybody would say, that's crazy. It's Big Brother. We don't want that. But where there's value, I think, is where the big opportunity is going to be. There will be a lot of missteps as a whole lot of companies stumble through that space in defining what's value to that brand between their stakeholders and them.
And I think,
Greg, I think we've got time for one more question.
Oh, all right.
I guess in some ways this could be a rhetorical question, but if you agree with the premise that the liking something in Facebook is a lot less predictive than actually opening up your wallet and paying for something, paying for what you like, and to the extent that there is the volume and the velocity of that data, I think in the financial services business, in a lot of ways at scales that might be comparable to the platform businesses like the Facebooks and the Twitters, what do you think are the gating factors for unlocking value out of transaction level data to the way the platform businesses like the Facebooks and the Twitters have done?
I'll obviously take this one for the beginning piece here, right? So this whole idea of stated versus demonstrated, right? To me, the point of sale transaction is demonstrated behavior. Authorizations are real time. The data could not be more structured. The ISO 8583 standard is something that we all know and love and enjoy, and Field 25 is this and all. Like it's readily accessible, and you can tie it back to the consumer itself. So if you start thinking about the 3 V's, the volume's there, the velocity, it's real time, all of those components are there. And then when you start thinking about the variety, it isn't necessarily because that one's all structured, you have all the data there. So it isn't just the transaction data. That's what that's what we do today. That's our business model. We work with that data. It's being able to combine that with the other pieces. Right? It's being able to know where your cell phone is nearby a store and you haven't gone in yet. Or if you have already gone in the store, maybe they don't need an offer or they don't need incentive to go buy something. And maybe now you're more at the SKU level of telling them Pepsi versus Coke, Coke versus Pepsi, whichever those points are there. So I think it's the point of sale transaction data is a huge, huge, huge win. And then you start to build upon that with what else can you tie to the point of sale data so that you can start delivering more relevance to the consumer? And if you can be more relevant to the consumer, you'll have a lot of people who would want to use that data, because that's what we're all trying to solve for, is right, trying to be more relevant to the consumer. Is that?
No, I think definitely gets to the question. I guess the question, part of the question was, what's the untouched frontier, of data asset yet to be monetized that will go into financial services transaction?
Yeah, I think it's, yeah, the question was, what's untouched yet when it comes to financial services data, right? I think it's, in my mind, I spent 10, 11 years at Capital One as well. We always sat on a lot of this data, and we always knew that it could do something pretty amazing. I think, that's one of the reasons why I went to Cardlytics, was because they were the ones doing something amazing with it. I think people are now realizing the value of the data that they have, and they're starting to go build business models, and I think there will be multiple business models that come out of that data, and it's all been sitting there a long time. So I don't know that this is a new acquisition problem for big data. I've always had it, now I got to go figure out the right business models for it and do it in a way that's pro-customer. I don't know if you guys have anything.
Well, you're talking about a sort of a back-end bias. So we have all this data. We're going to make the back end even bigger with all this data. So the real question is into what client experience am I trying to push this into? It's easier to get it into the mobile phone. But what kind of equipment do I have to put in the retailers? How do I, beyond this, how do I do it? I don't know if we know that. But how it will manifest is how fast these things can be weaved into the actual client experience as they're out in the wild.
Into the purchase behavior. That's it. Thanks, panel.
Thank you.